Welcome to the Program Design Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Monique, teacher and curriculum writer turned program mentor and business strategist for coaches, educators, and online experts. Whether you're looking to create your first ever group coaching program or scale your current offer for more freedom, revenue, and consistent income, this is the podcast for you. Here you'll find practical strategies and encouragement mixed with a bit of manifestation and intuition to help you grow and design a program you absolutely love. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Program Design Podcast. In this episode, it's part 2 of how I organize my days, my weeks, my months as a coach in 25 hours a week. In part 1, in last week's episode, we talked a lot about how I actually organize and how you can organize your time around first your quarters and your months. And the reason that this is so important is I think the mistake that I see people making is either they just have like a running to-do list that they try and work through, or they kind of like brain dump, or they are winging it. Or I see people plan too many things and try to fit too much in, and then you end up feeling behind. So I wanted to show you how I first create a bigger picture, like revenue generating focused goal for the quarter and for the month. The last thing that I know that I have done myself that I have to watch for on a regular basis is that it's so easy for me. And if you're listening, you're likely like this too, to really focus on delivery and really thinking always about your clients, caring about the people that you're serving and you're helping. But you need to make sure that you get paid too. And so sometimes the other mistake that I know I've made and that other clients have made is they focus so much on delivery that they don't have time for marketing and selling their business. And then they wonder why a few weeks later they haven't made any sales, or they get stressed out that their business isn't making enough money. So we looked at that first, making sure that you have those revenue generating activities in place, having a clear goal outcome in mind for your quarter, for your month, and how you're going to achieve those goals. We talked about that in part 1. In part 2, I want to share more of like a micro, how I actually look at planning my time around my week and around my day. So this is actually what it looks like on a day-to-day basis. So the first thing that I do when I look at my days and my weeks is I like to have a rhythm, and then I plan from there. So I like to have a rhythm for all of the main things that I want to do each week so that I actually get them done. So if you listen to a few episodes ago, I did an episode on my word of the year, which is overflow, because my delivery was once again creeping into everything. And I was spending a lot of time in my delivery and not as much time in my marketing and sales, which honestly was really like, I was just on all the time and it was stressing me out. And so I had to kind of recalibrate a little bit of my rhythm. But the reason I like a rhythm is I do have obviously projects that I plan from there, but I like to have as few decisions as possible to avoid that decision fatigue. So I like to have an idea of this is what I do on Mondays, this is what I do on Tuesdays, this is what I do on Wednesdays, and so forth. So I have already kind of like a rhythm in place for what really matters in my business. So the things that I want to make sure that I do every single week are part of my rhythm. So here's what mine looks like. Yours might look different, but I love having a rhythm. I call it a rhythm too because it's not like a rigid structure that I have to follow. It doesn't always line up this way, but this is kind of like the flow of it. And it makes sure that I don't forget things later that I haven't actually prioritized during the week. So the way that my rhythm looks is on Mondays. Today is a Monday. I'm batching podcasts on a Monday. I create an Instagram post. If you know me at all and you've listened to me for a little while, you know that I'm not a huge fan of Instagram and I'm not the best at posting there, but I try to post on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Those are my days to post on Instagram, but it is one of the lower priorities for me, I'm going to be honest, in my business. So I post on Instagram on Mondays, and on Mondays, I either have a free training because I usually do them once or twice a month, or I batch podcast episodes. So before I was just doing in 2025, I was just doing one podcast episode, but I was doing them weekly, and now I'm batching them. So this is actually my third today that I'm batching for the next few weeks. So I'm going to batch usually about 2 to 3 episodes on every second Monday, and then I'll have trainings on Mondays too. So those are the main things that I do on a Monday. Then on Tuesday, that is my client day. So my rhythm here, before I was still doing projects alongside client calls and sales calls and things like that. But now I'm just going to be focusing on calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If I get any extra done, fantastic, but that's going to be bonus. I am reserving those days specifically so I can really focus in on being present and just being on calls with people. So that's on my Tuesdays and Thursdays. Wednesdays, again, I have my Instagram content. That's going to be a freer day. That's my one day of the week that I have after school care. Generally speaking, I work from like 9:30 to 2. I go to get my kids from there. And so Wednesday is going to be my longer day because I work 25 hours a week. And so that'll be a bigger project day. So right now I'm looking at improving a bunch of course content for my main programs. It might be looking at things like funnels or what my strategies are going to be. My big one for right now is definitely going to be course updates. For you, it might be maybe your podcast if you're starting it or your website or whatever. So that's like a bigger project day for me on Wednesdays. I'm slowly evolving into that. As at the time of recording, I still have a bunch of calls on Wednesdays, but it's going to evolve into Tuesdays and Thursdays are my call day. And then on Thursdays, again, are my call day. And then on Fridays is really getting ready for the week ahead. So I write my broadcast. I have a regular newsletter that I send out to my email list. I have my client email that I write on Fridays that comes out on Mondays. I write to my group clients every week on Mondays so they know what's coming up, what trainings we have going on, what the calls are, all that kind of stuff. And then I write an Instagram post and I plan out the following week. So any kind of like finances, planning, paying my team, that happens on Fridays. So I don't do a lot of projects on Fridays. Those are usually more of my batching things. I might look at moving some of those to Wednesdays if I can swing it. I'd love to have maybe like a few days off a month. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to manage that, but I would love to have a few Fridays off a month. Coming back from the holidays, I really appreciated having some extra space, and I'm looking at maybe I could kind of try to plan my business around having the odd Friday off. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted on how that goes. But that's kind of my rhythm for the week. Now, the mistake I was making is I always had that rhythm, which was great. That does focus on my priorities. And you can tell last week we talked a little bit about what the difference between selling and marketing is. A lot of those are more marketing focused because I have a sales system in place. So those are like my marketing things, like writing podcast show notes and recording podcasts, for example. But from there, the mistake that I was making is I was planning out my weeks, dutifully planning out my weeks. I feel so much better when I plan out my day and I plan out my week. But the mistake that I was making up until very recently is when I planned out my month and my quarter, I prioritized revenue generating activities, which was awesome. But then when I went to go plan out my week, I did the opposite. So what I used to teach is this idea of, I'm sure you've probably seen it, but it's like you have when you think about the jar, a lot of people will end up kind of haphazardly if you don't plan in advance. And like the sand goes in first and then the pebbles and then the main rocks, and you don't have space for the main rocks, AKA your priorities, right? So I always prioritize what are my rocks, then my pebbles, then my sand. And the thing that I was doing per week that was the mistake is that the first thing I would look at on when I went to plan out the week is I would look at what existing calls do I have. I would plan those first and then I would plan things around them. But when I thought back to it, I'm like, then I'm always prioritizing client delivery. And my natural way is to over deliver and do too many extra trainings, too many extra one-on-one calls, too many extra things. And then I don't have space for either me, AKA time to eat lunch. I was not eating lunch for a while and like eating late because I had back-to-back calls. Or I won't have time for other big business building projects. Like I haven't updated my course as much as I wanted to because I was spending so much time in one-on-one calls. And so the mistake that I was making is I was prioritizing first all of my one-on-one calls and then making all of my other projects fit around those. But then that's putting delivery first and revenue generating second. And we need to make sure that we're prioritizing revenue generating, even though it still feels tough for me, because if we don't generate revenue, there will be no clients to serve and your business won't keep running. So what I'm doing now is I'm saying Tuesdays and Thursdays will definitely be my client day, but I'm making sure those big projects are scheduled in first. And I have clear days for those. So my Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are for those bigger projects. So I don't have all of my time taken up with client calls. So that was a mistake I was making. Make sure that when you're planning out your weeks, you're prioritizing again, those revenue generating activities that we talked about in part 1. So I always plan out my week on Fridays. And then I think about what I'm going to be doing each day. And so what I'll look at when I'm organizing my time is I'll look at my big projects for the month and what priorities I gave myself. That was in part 1. And then I'll think about what are the main tasks. If I haven't created a project plan for them, I'll plan them here. But usually I've already created a project plan, which is in monday.com, which I'll be sharing in part 3, how I organize those kinds of things like my ideas, my project plans, client notes, all that kind of stuff will be in part 3. So from there, I think about my days. And I hope that this is helpful for you because coming back to part 1, I shared this. The reason I wanted to share this is because it was actually a question from one of my longer term clients about how to organize her days because, she's in her business full time. And it's like you go from having a 9 to 5 where a lot of this is dictated for you and you come to your business and you're like, where am I prioritizing my time, right? So your business doesn't need to look exactly like mine. It's just to give you an idea of how I run it so you can think about what might work well for you. One of my mentors, when she runs her months, she has a no call week, which I thought was really cool. I don't personally, I still like to have the calls each week because it kind of keeps me in tune with things. I don't do my group calls every week. I do them 3 times a month, generally speaking. Sometimes I have bonuses, but 3 times a month. And then I have one-on-one calls throughout. But I still do them on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But another way that you could think about is maybe having a no call week, like once a month. Like that works really well for her. Once I have I've got my rhythm in place, I've planned out my week, then at the beginning of every day or even the night before, I still plan out my day. So I'll look at what are the main projects, how long are they going to take me? Like I'll think about how long it's going to take me. Like right now, I'm batching my 3rd episode and I said it was going to take me about 2 hours. I was thinking probably for 2 episodes, but I was hoping I could get done 3 and I've got 3 done because I'm batching more this time around. And I plan out my day to make sure that I hit my main priorities. I know when they're actually going to take place. So I feel like I've got enough space. And I try to, not always, but I try to have 3 top priorities. Those are the main tasks. And then I have other tasks that are like bonus tasks. So if I don't get to those top 3 or 4, I still feel like it was a productive day because I got to the main things that are helping me move forward and where I want to go and hitting my goals, and that I accomplished those first. So let's recap how I spend my weeks and my days, and then I'll be sharing a little bit about what it's going to look like in next week's episode. So the first thing we chatted about was I always plan my quarter and my month first before creating any kind of to-do list because that gives me a really clear focus and direction as to where I'm going and where I want the business to go and what I should be prioritizing. Because if you're anything like me, there's just so many things you could be focusing on. Like I would also love to redo my website at this point, but it is not one of my priorities at the moment. It will be later on in 2026. So I look at my quarter and my month first. Then I look at having a weekly rhythm so that takes out a lot of the decision fatigue. When am I going to have my podcast done? When am I going to create Instagram content? Should I create an Instagram post today? No. That's already created in advance. If it's Monday, I'm creating an Instagram post. So I have my rhythm. Then from there, I plan out my week, prioritizing not just client delivery stuff, but also revenue generation. And then each day I plan out my day at the beginning as well. And I have to say, whenever I don't plan out my day, that's when I feel kind of scrambled. When I jump right into client calls, it's always helpful for me to plan out my day. And I would highly recommend it if you don't plan out your day yet too. So I hope that this was helpful for you. I would love to hear if you had any ahas, any realizations. Send me a message on Instagram. I'm laurenmonique.business on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. And in next week's episode, it's going to be part 3 of the series. It's not going to be so much about my time, a little bit. It's more about how I actually organize my thoughts and where everything goes. So how I organize like client notes, like project plans, how I communicate with my team. And so people know when things have been done, where I put like things that I'm learning about, where I put project plans or these like month-long plans and all of that kind of stuff. That's what we're going to be diving into in part 3 of this series. I would love to hear if you've had any ahas, like I said, any realizations. Do send me a message on Instagram. Loved having you here with me, and I will see you on the next week of the Program Design Podcast.